Phyllis Guy, you are on the Get Foxy show. Thank you so much for being here today. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, thanks, Terry. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so glad you reached out to me and we are able to do this.
You bet. So, with the work that you do, how exactly did that all fall into place? Did your profession just sort of end up in your lap, or did you really know what you were going to do when you started out to do it and you just shot out and sought it out?
Does anybody ever know what they're going to do? No, it kind of came as a process. I'm a mind-body eating coach. So I help people really get unstuck in their health and help them come to a better place mentally as well as physically. And a lot of nutrition coaches, health coaches come into this business as someone who has had maybe I wouldn't say near death, but really significant health issue. And they came back from it, and food has really brought them back and that kind of thing. I didn't have that compelling of an experience. Mine was more of a process. In 2002, I became a personal trainer. I was training clients and using it for myself as well, and realized it just wasn't enough. You can't exercise off a poor diet. So I thought, well, get into nutrition. That's the way to go. But even that, back then, it was still calories in, calories out, exercise more, eat less. Quality of food didn't matter so much. All those bars were coming out, protein bars and things like that. And now, about 3 years ago, I got certified through the Institute for Psychology of Eating. And it's like, oh, of course, psychology, eating, it makes all the difference. Without the psychology and the emotions, our food issues and health issues, it kind of pulls it all together, makes us healthier in a well-rounded way. Did that answer the question?
Yes, totally. I'm curious though now, when you say psychology and nutrition, you're essentially talking about emotional eating, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. We use food for so many things. We use it to celebrate. We use it when we are stressed. We use it when we're angry. We use it when we're sad, we're depressed. I use it to procrastinate. If there's something I want to do, I'll go to the kitchen first and get a handful of nuts or something and say, well, I can't make that phone call. I'm eating a handful of nuts. So, yeah.
So how do you begin to assess with your clients what emotions are causing them to eat, and how do you go about creating a treatment plan or correcting the behavior?
We definitely go through a lot of questions. It is coaching, so it's not just about one thing. One thing doesn't fit for everybody. It's really what's going on in your life. Are you working too hard? Is it a relationship issue? Maybe you're working out too hard and your body's saying, okay, I quit. I've had enough. Work stress, family stress, money stress, almost anything can cause stress and emotional upheaval and cause us to eat more.
Okay. Tell me a story. I want to hear about some of the women that you've worked with regarding emotional eating. Who have you seen that's had the biggest transformation?
A few. One of the most recent ones, I'll call her Wendy. She's diabetic. She's a very successful businesswoman, and that's a lot of who I see too, is successful businesswomen who are very successful in that part of their life, but they just need a little help in the health part. They're not confident in their food choices or around food, so I help them with that. She's diabetic. Her husband is diabetic and in total denial. He won't change what he eats. Her 86-year-old mother lives with them and does all the cooking. She doesn't want to change the way she's cooking at 86. You're pretty set in your ways. She has an 18-year-old son. She's trying to get through college or get to college. She has a lot going on her plate and in her life. But she was committed. She was very determined. So I took her through the first month of coaching. And in the first month, I get people off sugar. because that's the biggest thing that will affect them emotionally, believe it or not. It's the sugar and the processed foods that really affect our gut and in turn affects our emotions. So taking her through this first month, she did great. I mean, she really laid the law down for her family and said, this is the way I'm eating. I'm taking care of me. We got her mother involved, her husband, not so much, but she took it on herself to really nourish herself and what she needed. And I don't know if you know what the A1C is, but it's a test that tests your blood glucose over a 3-month period. She started at 8.7. The doctors want us to be at 5.6 or lower. So she started pretty high, 8.7. After the first couple of weeks, it was down to 6.7. A week after the sugar detox, about a month into it, she was at 6.2. I called her last week and she's still staying consistent on the program and loves it. Her energy is better. She's sleeping better. She's really taking care of herself. But that also leads, because she has these new habits, it leads into her taking care of herself in other ways. She's actually asking her husband for a little more help around the house. She's talked to her mother about feeding some of these better foods onto their plate and cooking them in ways that are acceptable to her. So it's really a whole cascade. When you change one thing, so many other things will change.
Wow. So I'm curious about this connection. You said detoxing off of sugar can change your emotional status?
Absolutely, because contrary to prior knowledge about the gut and the brain, we used to think they were separate. We were pretty much disconnected between the gut and the brain. But now we're learning that our neurotransmitters are mostly in our gut. And so if we keep our gut healthy, that keeps the connections between the brain and the gut healthy. And that's what we want, because things like dopamine, our feel-good hormone, is mostly in the gut, and serotonin, which affects our affect or our mood, as well as acetylcholine, which affects memory. That's all in our gut. So if we keep our gut healthy, that keeps the pathway between the gut and the brain stronger.
So how does sugar negatively affect the gut?
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question. I could go on forever. Number one is inflammation. Sugar is not a nutritional food. It's an anti-nutrient. Natural sugars that are in, say, sweet potatoes or an apple or something, that's fine. But when you're talking processed foods and high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners, it's like that really affects the gut as well as the lining of the gut. So things are entering our bloodstream that shouldn't. And our body works really hard to get rid of these things that don't belong in our gut. So it has to take energy away from, say, our brain and being creative and focused and work on getting rid of those toxins. So it's not putting energy into being productive and focused. It's putting energy on just trying to be healthy, getting the excess blood sugar out of the system. And I don't know if you know this, but Alzheimer's is now considered type 3 diabetes because it's the sugar and processed foods that is affecting our brains.
That's fascinating.
It is.
So sugar causes inflammation,
Right.
and it decreases the energy. Are there other ways that it influences the gut?
That's the biggest part. And as far as the insulin response, when insulin goes up, trying to get the glucose out of the blood into either your muscles or our liver to be stored. And then if it can't, if your muscles are already full and your liver's already full, it is stored as fat. So basically that's the fat storage. It's sugar that causes fat storage in our body, not the fat. I always say fat in food does not equal fat on the body. It's the sugar in food that equals fat on the body.
I would completely agree with you there, Phyllis. As a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, we talk a lot about 5-element theory and how that relates to the organs. And the gut, or at least the digestive system in Chinese medicine, would be considered the spleen and the stomach.
Mm.
And there's a flavor associated with the earth element, and that's the sweet flavor. And so in Chinese medicine, we say that that sweet flavor, a little bit of sweet flavor,
Hmm.
helps boost the function of the spleen and the stomach, which their jobs are to help transform food into good, clean, clear energy that we can use.
Mm.
However, too much of that sweet flavor actually gums up the works.
Right.
And it creates, instead of good, clean, clear energy, it creates this turbid, murky, yuck energy that in Chinese medicine we either call phlegm or dampness. And depending on where those show up in the body, um, then we can define which one's which. But a lot of times dampness can show up as skin problems, psoriasis, eczema, acne, those kinds of things. It can also show up as an allergic reaction. Again, a lot of inflammatory
Hmm.
type issues. It can also show up as adipose tissue,
Hmm.
fat. So there again, you're taking in all that sugar, all that sweet stuff, and from the ancient Chinese way of thinking, it all kind of starts to meld with the scientific research that you've studied. So I
Yeah,
find this really fascinating.
it is. Yeah, it's funny how it all fits together in one way or another.
You bet.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
what are some of the most common questions that you get as a nutritional coach?
How am I ever going to give up my favorite drink or sugar, whatever? And it is a little difficult at first, but I think of our health and nutrition and lifestyle as kind of the boiling frog or the boiling water, the frog in the boiling water scenario. Over our lifetime, it's not something that happens now and you feel it now. It's over a lifetime. When we were in our 20s in college or wherever, we could stay out till 1 o'clock in the morning, still make it to that 8 o'clock class the next morning and be fine and energetic and ready to go. Our bodies were young and we didn't care. Now, as we get older, 30s, 40s, 50s, this is all catching up with us, right? So this is, you're starting to boil. It's the things like digestive issues, maybe some eczema, maybe even heart disease or diabetes, or worse. So it's catching up with us. So changing these lifestyle factors and especially stress and sugar, we can bring down that water a little bit so it's not so hot and it's not boiling, getting us back to a regular temperature.
That's always an interesting analogy. The frog in the pot. And
Mm.
if the water's already boiling, the frog just will jump right out of the pot. But if you just gently increase that temperature, then eventually you'll cook the frog.
Right, right. And it's that way with habits, eating habits as well. Some people just, you got to jump right in and make the changes. Others, it's the slow changes. Maybe we change breakfast first, then maybe we get rid of the Diet Coke, and then, habit by habit, things start to change, and then you get healthier. Mm.
You bet. You bet. That's what I tend to preach in my clinic is just small changes, especially
Mhm.
when it comes to the food that we eat. I've got a little dietary recommendation sheet that kind of follows some Chinese medicine tenets, but it was pre-printed. And one of the things it says is avoid or minimize these specific foods for these kinds of conditions. And I always tell my patients, let's not worry about avoiding.
Mm.
Let's work on minimizing. Because to me, it's like if you just immediately say, okay, I'm cutting sugar completely out of my diet. Well, boy, life's just going to suck.
Right, especially that first week.
So instead, it's like, okay, let's just make some simple choices and say, okay, instead of having ice cream after dinner, and a big scoop of it, all right, let's start small. Let's go with just, a couple of tablespoons of ice cream instead. You still get it,
Hmm.
but you're at least reducing it.
Right.
And as time goes, then those choices aren't quite so hard.
Mm. Yeah. And that's great for some people if they can have the little 2 spoonfuls of ice cream. On the flip side of that, some people just can't even have it in the house. So what I like to do with my clients is take them through a 21-day sugar detox, where you're allowed a couple of, fruits, like maybe a banana, an unripe banana, and some green apples that don't trigger that response in the brain that says, I want more and more sugar. That first week is tough, but when they get to the other side of that, after the 21 days, they're sleeping better, they've got more energy, their skin is better, they just are, life is good.
It's really kind of surprising the addictive quality
Mm-hmm.
that can be in certain foods.
Right. And the taste buds change. A green apple at the beginning does not taste, it tastes much sweeter at the end than it does at the beginning because our tastes change.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. Yeah.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, Phyllis.
Sure.
And I want to ask you, what does Foxy and being Foxy mean to you?
Oh, wow. It means just having that confidence and that little, I say sex appeal, but it's more than that. It's just being confident in your body, walking into a room and saying, yeah, I belong here. I'm going to stand up front and take in everything I can, not being that wallflower in the back, no matter what your size is. I've seen very confident women who are very large and just command a room. I've seen very small women the same way. And I've seen it the opposite. Very large women are hiding behind their bodies or crowds, and as well as very fit, lean women who you would think are very confident or should be very confident and good looking, but they're not. So it's really that whole attitude. Here I am. I deserve to be here. I'm worth it. This is my life.
Amen to that. Well, has there ever been a time in your life where you couldn't find your foxiness? And what did you do to reclaim it? What made you feel the most confident?
I don't like your questions.
I'm sorry. You get them anyway.
Okay. Oh, wow. Oh, sure. When I can't get something, like I love ballroom dancing, and I took some private lessons for a while, and now I practice a lot. My boyfriend and I dance together and practice together, and there are just sometimes when you're just not getting it. And we do social dancing and we're on the floor, and it's like there's some dances it's like I just don't feel comfortable doing this. I'm not going to do it. So it's just a matter of saying, yeah, it's okay. Everybody's in the same boat. You're not alone in this. You've done your job. You've practiced. You're doing everything right. Just go out there and do it. Be confident in what you're doing. It's your time to shine. And I did do a competition about 1.5 years ago. And that, oh my gosh, I was scared to death. The first dance was miserable. But after that, once I got my feet wet, it's like, yeah, it's kind of nice being out here. I know what I'm doing. And as long as I focused on my partner and his face, I was fine. So it's just focusing on that one thing and just getting through it. Yeah. And it was fun. It was such a fun thing to do.
That's fantastic, Phyllis. I didn't know you were a dancer.
I love to dance, all kinds of dancing. Ballroom, salsa, West Coast swing, country, not so much.
And what do you find so enjoyable about dancing?
Just being in your body. I love the music. If you dance with a partner, you've got that connection. One's leading, one's following, and if you're trying to think too much, it's not going to work. If you're trying to anticipate a lead, it's not going to work. So you really have to be in tune with the movement that he's doing, whether it's a small hand movement or even a thigh or whatever, a head turn. You've got to be really in tuned and focused, as well as listening to the beat of the music and making sure you're light on your feet. And oh my goodness, there are so many things going on. So it's that whole embodiment, and dancing is, as I get more and more into it, and learning that it's one of the best things we can do physically and mentally for our brains.
Yeah. To me, that That right there is super Foxy. And
Mm,
why is because what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I misinterpret, but what I'm hearing from you is that when you are dancing, you said you are in your body.
absolutely.
And as you're in your body, you have to be present and in your feminine in order
Mm,
to receive that lead from the masculine.
beautiful. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this beautiful interplay between the polarities of femininity and masculinity. That's this wonderful dance. And
Mm,
yeah, when I watch somebody ballroom dancing, I mean, you look at these women and you look at these men and they're like, "Oh, the women are just so feminine and the men are just so masculine." And I'm just blown away by by the interplay of it.
yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah. And motion is emotion. I'll never forget. It was one of my first dance lessons, and they had a social dance after. And one of the instructors asked me to dance. I said, okay. Of course, he's really good. I'm not. And just the music just took me, and his lead was so good and around the dance floor. And I ended that dance. I was almost in tears. It just moved me so much. It was wonderful. Yeah.
And there again, there's that interplay between movement of our bodies, being in our bodies, and the diet side of it. So if you're having these emotional issues that are causing you to eat, perhaps getting the body in motion
Mhm.
is a good
Right.
thing.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. Just walking can help get the blood flowing, get things flowing throughout the body. Um, Yoga, if that's what you're into. And I always ask people, I said, if all the activities in life burn the same amount of calories, built the same amount of muscle and whatever, what would you choose? And I want people to be happy in their activity. If you don't like going to the gym, you're not going to go to the gym and move. But if you like being, in your kitchen and dancing like nobody's watching, absolutely do that. Or yoga, or running, or whatever it is for you. I like getting out in nature and hiking, once in a while do some trail running. And I also do CrossFit, which to me is similar to dancing, because some of those movements are just those small incremental movements. If you just change it a little bit, makes a huge difference with how much weight you can pull or push.
Hmm. Well, I had a thought and it just escaped me. So I will move on to the next thought. Uh,
Okay.
who embodies Foxy in your world right now, Phyllis?
Wow. Who embodies Foxy in my world? I like my sister. I have an older sister who's just so together. I mean, I come from a family of 8. She's the oldest. I'm the youngest. There are 23 years in between us. Um, and I really look up to her because she came through, the 60s. She's 74, something like that. and, um, and just that whole thing. And she's such a together person, which is so unlike, it seems, the rest of our family and how I feel sometimes. And she did it her way. She didn't care what anybody thought. She was going to do it her way. She got a history degree. My father didn't want her to get a history degree. How can you make money with a history degree? She made it work. And she's now living in San Francisco. She developed the women's building out there, and is just very influential in that city as far as health um, and wellness in that city. So I really look up to her. She's very Foxy. When she's around, it's like people are just um, attracted to her in so many different ways.
I love that.
Mhm.
So the thought did come back to me.
Okay.
I knew it would. Sometimes they don't. But we were talking about movement and emotion, and the word emotion can, at least for what I've seen in my clinic, mean energy
Mhm.
in motion. And
Right.
so when our bodies are in motion, we're moving energy. And when
Mhm.
we allow ourselves to feel our feelings, that allows energy to move as well.
Right.
And that's a big thing, at least in Chinese medicine. The problems tend to occur when we don't allow energy to move. If we are constantly stuffing our emotions or not allowing us to express and process our emotions,
Right.
or if we're not moving our bodies. And the
That's
two are often related.
right. Yes. Yeah, I remember before my divorce, I was stuffing my emotions a lot. I'd always grab a handful of this and a handful of that, thinking it would make me feel better and I didn't have to deal with whatever I needed to deal with. But then after, it's like, yeah, I can, I fed myself better and I actually lost weight. And so, yeah, it makes a big difference when we're not stuffing. And we don't realize it a lot of times. That's why I have job security.
I think within our wonderful American culture, you and I and the rest of the people that I interview on this show, we will definitely have job security.
Yes.
But this is what we're doing. We're putting out the good word so that we can kind of rebel against this toxic culture that we have and actually make a change for the better. So
Right.
we're fighting the good fight here, Phyllis.
We are. Yeah. And I always think of that movie. I can't remember the name of it. Way back in the 70s. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes. Was that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, maybe?
No, it was like a newspaper or network. Was it Network? Maybe was the name of it.
Could
I just
be.
that's the only line I remember. Is I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Well, that's how I feel about where we've gotten in our food culture and our everything that's advertised on TV, and they say it's healthy, but oh my gosh, it's really not.
How can people get a hold of you, Phyllis, if they want more information or decide they would like to work with you?
Yeah, my email is choosehealthpg@gmail.com. So I'm all about choices and choosing what foods we eat to become more confident and empowered in your own body, in your own kitchen. I'm also on Facebook under My Natural Body Wisdom. My email, what else? Oh, my website, mynaturalbodywisdom.com, where you can find me.
Excellent. And you mentioned you had an offer?
I do. I know people are often feel stuck and where they are in their food and their health. So I just love to get on the phone with people for 30 minutes and just kind of see where they are and see if I can help them out at all. It's a complimentary phone call. And it's really, we go through some of the things like getting back to real food, some of the stressors in your life and how stress affects your gut and your brain and that kind of things, as well as eating more fat. I love to talk about fat. And just anything else you want to talk about, or whatever they want to talk about in that call. So it's just getting them back on track. And if I can help support them afterwards, I'd love to do that as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your generosity, Phyllis. So, ladies, if you're listening, definitely take Phyllis up on that offer of a free call. She's there to chat with you and answer your questions.
Right.
Excellent. Phyllis, what is the one piece of advice that you would have for our listeners out there
Mm.
about how to stay foxy?
How to stay foxy. Good idea. Just know that you are. Have confidence in how far you've come and what you've built for yourself. I'm sure your listeners, so many of them are successful in little ways and big ways, and know that you deserve to be foxy and have confidence in what you're doing all the time. Go big or go home.
Well, Phyllis, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I know you are out there changing lives and doing big things as well. And I appreciate you and honor you for being here today.
Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate it and honor you as well.